Chicago Tonight, broadcast live, Monday, December 30th, 1996.
Good evening, I'm John Calloway, and welcome to Chicago Tonight. Residents of the Austin community on Chicago's west side are holding an emergency meeting this evening. The emergency is the low state of trust between the Austin community and the Chicago Police Department. The emergency was provoked by the recent indictments of 7 Austin District Tactical Police officers. The 7 are charged with robbery and extortion of drug dealers. What does the police department know about the people who were supervising those under indictment? How widespread is the problem of police association with gangs? Can the Chicago Police Department be trusted to clean its own house? We have guests here in our studio standing by to tackle those questions. But first, let's go to Chicago Tonight correspondent Phil Ponce at the community meeting on Chicago's west side. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, John. This emergency meeting was called by several community groups who are very concerned. Some would even say outraged by the allegations that there were bad cops working the streets here on the west side. Community activists acknowledge that the Austin district is a high crime district, but they say that community policing had an impact in reducing some of the crime, and that's why it's so important to sort of reestablish the connection between the police and the citizens here. And one of the people who could be very key in implementing those, re-implementing those good relations is Patricia Hill, who is president of the African American Police League. Ms. Hill, what was your reaction to the indictments, and are you concerned about the fact that it's casting a shadow on the entire district here, all the officers?
Well, first of all, we had a deep concern about the indictments, a lot of concerns. One is that the process in which these officers were found to be or allegedly accused of being guilty, we feel is a one-sided process. If in fact community policing is working, then there should have been some checks and balances where you wouldn't have 7 officers at once being indicted. There's a process where they could have been checked along the way. There's a process in the police department where if an officer is suspected of committing a misconduct or not doing his or her job, there's a process where they're counseled, they're talked to, they're given opportunities to correct their behavior, and especially in cases of the tactical team, they are given the opportunity to get off the tactical team. I'm not saying that these officers are not guilty. I'm saying that there was a breakdown in the very process that the police department states that it has intact for a police officer. That's from the police department's perspective. However, from the community's perspective, this demonstrates, in our opinion, that this so-called partnership that exists between the police department and the community in regards to the CAPS program may or may not.
That's the community policing program.
Well, the alleged community policing program. It's virtually impossible to have a community policing program when you don't have a police department that reflects the community in which it supposedly serves. And that's what you have in Chicago. So,
what is it going to take for the police department and the community to link up again in fighting crime in partnership?
Well, I think you're being presumptuous in saying link up again. There has never been a full partnership between our community, the African American community, and the police department. Never has there been a full partnership. There's always been an agenda that the police department has had that is not fully been made aware of by the community. So we're concerned, or we're stating now that maybe this incident and meetings that are being held here tonight will highlight the fact that there's a possibility that the rhetoric has not met the behavior in terms of what the department has been advocating. And the fact that the community is very disappointed that the key representatives of the city, the mayor, and the superintendent are not present, and they have been disrespected because it is an issue that casts a aspersion on the entire city, not just Austin.
Patricia Hill, thank you very much. Reporting live from the west side, Phil Ponce. John, back to you.
Thank you very much, Phil. And now joining us in the studio are Michael W. Hoke, who is Assistant Deputy Superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. Deputy Hoke is in charge of the Internal Affairs Division, which investigates allegations of police corruption. Melvin Delk, a full-time community activist in Austin, who is a former legislative aide to Alderman Shanether Butler and who ran for the city treasurer in the Republican primary in the last city election in Chicago. George Knox, professor of criminal justice at Chicago State University and editor-in-chief of the Journal of gang research, and Brad Cummings, editor of the Austin Voice, a community newspaper that's been investigating and reporting on police and corruption issues for the past 8 years. And Mr. Cummings has been a resident of the Austin area for 20 years. And welcome all to Chicago Tonight. Deputy, let me ask you about the point that Pat Hill made, because I think a lot of people think, with these officers out there on the street for the better part of 2 years that you're doing this investigation, shouldn't there have been a process that got them off the street as opposed to this elaborate sting thing that led to the indictments?
Well, the investigation went on for a year, John. Okay. Once we entered into the investigation and we got knowledge that they were committing the acts that people like Mr. Cummings had brought to our attention, and crimes were committed, we felt that we had to continue the investigation to try to get everyone who's involved in this conspiracy and bring them into the court into a court and let them face a judge and a jury and answer for what they were doing.
And are you saying that Mr. Cummings was responsible, among others, for the kind of information that helped you?
In the past, I've read his newspaper articles, and when I went to the Internal Affairs Division, we did a lot of research and decided that there were. There was indications that there was a serious problem in the Austin community, and we had to attack the problem as aggressively as we could. As the head of Internal Affairs, can you say that we're dealing with a few bad apples, or is there something systemic going on here? I would say that we're dealing with a group of people that were bad apples in the area. I don't think it's something that will exist across the police department or even throughout the district, the 15th district. Somebody in Austin was quoted in the newspapers as saying, well, you got the night shift of the tax squad in Austin. What about the day shift? Well, the shift, that's not a fair response. Because they rotate every month. I mean, this month you're on days. But the question is, did you get them all? We have the bulk of them, and we have a few more that we're looking at, and we will probably address them in their future. What are we to make of the people who supervise these people who are under indictment? They're under investigation, and we will hope to get to the bottom of if any of them are involved in the very near future. And what's the time frame on that? We're now moving rapidly. I can't say days, but we're moving very rapidly. And does your investigation show any pattern with respect to those who were arrested with respect to either their backgrounds or gang affiliations? Tell us about that. Now, we've arrested 7 people so far, and it came out in court that one of them has gang affiliations. We're not aware of that until sometime in the middle of this investigation we determined that he had involvement with gangs. Was that news to you, or did you say, yes, as the head of Internal Affairs, I could have predicted there would be some of that given the culture of this city? No, that was new to us, and like I said, it came out in the middle of this investigation. But I mean, don't you have a problem that you want officers who are knowledgeable and really streetwise and savvy about gangs, and at the same time, you don't want them to get too close? Oh, we don't want them to get close at all. And if we had knowledge that they were involved with gangs prior to their being hired, we would attempt to keep them off of out of our profession. Mr. Cummings, when you hear what you've heard tonight and what you've seen so far, do you feel gratified that your writings, I mean, you've been writing about this for a long time, that the police department paid attention to you and went to work on this? What are your feelings? Absolutely not. No, we have ceased cooperating with Internal Affairs because we don't believe Internal Affairs does anything, quite frankly. And what were these indictments? They came through the FBI. The FBI has been in residence at the 15th District over the past year. The officers out there have known it. I spoke just last week with some officers at the 15th District, one who was on the TAC unit, and said, how is it that they can indict one person and not indict his partner, when his partner has been on the police department longer and is rumored to have taught everybody how to do this. Mr. Hoke, what's the answer to that? Well, number one, this investigation started at the Chicago Police Department. The Chicago Police Department, and I mean myself, took the informants to the FBI. I sat down and spoke with the FBI. By the way, why did you go to the FBI? Well, you have to go, we have to make a decision at the start of these investigations whether we're going to the state's attorney's office or to a federal agency, because you have to get a prosecutorial agency involved with us. We made a decision to go to the FBI.
Why?
At that time. We just felt that they were better suited to run with this investigation.
Why?
I had dealt with the FBI and with the DEA on the Larry Hoover investigation, which I ran for the police department, and I had very good results from that. And I was very comfortable working
All right, so
with
you
them.
started the investigation.
We started the investigation.
Now, do you acknowledge that, and then that they called the FBI in? Do you acknowledge that, and shouldn't that temper your comments about internal affairs?
I can't acknowledge that. I don't know. I know that I have been in touch with the FBI. I have been dealing with them for the past 5 years regarding the officers. These are not the officers that are on my list. These are not the officers that are on the FBI's list.
You look at Deputy Hoke and say, I don't trust you, Deputy Hoke?
Well, Deputy Hoke, I think, is probably a very nice man, but in terms of internal affairs, whenever we have talked to internal affairs, whenever we have made reports, we've gotten a very nice form letter back saying that they appreciate the information, but their investigation shows no basis. The material we get, I'm not an investigative reporter. I get our information from the people out there on the streets.
And you've
Melvin does, yes.
do I understand that you've had internal affairs hang up on you? On the
Yes,
phone?
I've had internal, well, not internal affairs, no. I've had news affairs, and I've had the superintendent's office.
Is there
when we
anything you
tried
can
to
say to
report
this man to
something.
reassure him, since he's such clearly an important source in Austin?
I really, truly think that what the results that we've brought to the table so far speak for themselves. I mean, we've went out, we've conducted an investigation for well over a year. We did it with mainly Chicago police officers being involved in it. The informants were ours. The undercover people who were the victims of crimes mainly are Chicago police officers. This is something that we did. We started it. We carried through to it to the finish, and I think everyone's acknowledged that.
And there's more to come.
United States Attorney, the investigation continues.
Things are out of control in the 15th District. It's from the top down. We got a report from drug dealers on the street, and this is a frightening report, that the 2 officers who were shot in the apartment building across the street from the 15th District, that they answered a call that other officers, these were both rookies.
March of '95?
Yes,
Okay.
and they raced across the street in answer of a call that there was a shooting going on. They raced across. The more experienced officers did not. And the drug dealers are saying, do you know why that is the case? It's because they knew that that was a protected building.
I'm John Callaway. Thank you and good night.